HR Famous is brought to you by HRU Tech, a contingent staffing firm specializing in engineering, IT, and technically related placements across multiple industries. If you're looking for technical talent or searching for a career, look no further than HRU Tech. Find them online at hrutech.com and call them today. HR Famous is also brought to you by Kinetics, the leading RPO recruiting firm for growth companies, named by HRO Today as the top midsize RPO provider. Kinetics uses its unique skill-based recruiter model to deliver on RPO engagements, allowing them to customize scope to meet your unique hiring needs. If you have recruiting challenges and want to consider RPO as a solution, give Kinetics a call. Find them online at kineticshr.com.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Sackett, and we are back with another edition of the HR Famous podcast with my friends Jessica Lee out of I always want to say the Metroplex. It's not. It's the DMV in Washington, D.C., but she's out of Virginia. Jessica, how are you doing?
The DMV, not to be mistaken with the Department of Motor Vehicle Licensing. I'm good. You know, week 6, hanging in there.
Week 6, day 3,000, 30,000, whatever we prefer to get. And then also Kris Dunn, my great friend out of Birmingham, Alabama, in the middle of a lightning storm. So if we lose him, we know why. Kris, how are you?
I'm doing good, Tim. Great to join you today on my very good network, I might add.
I am so excited. Kris had who do you have for your internet provider?
We have Charter, which I used to be a VP of HR for, and they call that like Spectrum. Yeah. So we had the guy come into the house last week during this COVID crisis, and we had to. It was interesting, Tim and Jlee. We had to negotiate for how far we were going to take the whole COVID thing. So I said, "Okay, booty's on." Booty's on.
For your shoes, just
let's maintain distance.
No,
and I'm not going to make you go to the mask.
Katie, did he pull the booties out of his pocket that he wore at every other house? At that point,
I thought about that.
I want to see him ripping open brand new plastic first time booties. Otherwise, what's the difference? You know.
I know.
You might as well just have him. You might as well have him lick your cheek.
So to finish this story. The modem was blazing after he left, and we did the drive-through Best Buy thing for a brand new router. So I'm hoping this goes well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you sound amazing. You know, and also Jessica has a new mic that that you had to spray a Lysol all over to use, but we're all running with scissors right now.
I know. You got to quarantine those packages for 24 hours. They say it stays alive on cardboard.
That Yeti came from Wuhan, right?
Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Hey, so
thanks.
Before we got on, we were talking about our TV watching habits. Jessica and Lee and I both have watched Parasite, and we're trying to get Kris to watch Parasite. And then he was talking about how far down the rung he is in terms of his TV watching, but yet he still won't watch Parasite, which is a great movie. Jessica, I want to get your opinion first before I allow Kris to come in here and blow us up. So I equated Parasite with Jordan Peele's first really breakthrough movie, which was, what was that called?
Get Out.
It had that. Parasite to me was on that same level, right? Like Oscar award worthy, winning obviously, but to me it took me because he did something. What's the director's name?
Bong Joon-ho.
Bong Joon-ho did something that I think Jordan Peele did, that nobody had ever went that path, and it just was a great. KD, so you come in and you won't even watch it. Why?
Wait, what are you choosing to watch over it? Maybe
exactly.
Let's start there.
Now it seems very interesting. I thought this was the movie that they did a while back that was Kevin James as a pest control person that was going house to house. That's not the Parasite we're talking about?
Yeah, Kevin James learned Korean and then did the entire movie in Korean.
All right,
Kevin James was in an Oscar-winning movie. Yes.
I'm gonna get this done. I'm gonna get Parasite done in the next 48 hours because I am all the way down. We've worked through Netflix, so season 6 of Bosch on Amazon, gone. Ozark, gone. We're just like knocking these things down like we are. We're at a buffet, right? I'm up later. It's crazy. So I'm all the way down, Jlee. Get this. My wife convinced me to start a Netflix series called The Crown. So I'm all the way down to watching a young Queen Elizabeth learn the ropes of managing industrial fog in London.
Not a bad series. I mean, you could go lower, but
Jay, what are you on? What are you on? What are you watching?
Well, all I will tell you is it's gotten pretty bad. I mean, it's to the point where someone on my team texted me a recommendation of a series called Too Hot to Handle because I like my watching habits are so awful now that she was like, "Oh, maybe you'll like this. Too Hot to Handle." So that's all I can say. It's bad.
I do. So we just got into a Hulu series called Little Fires Everywhere.
Oh, so
Reese
I'm going to read the book
and Kerry Washington. It's so good.
Okay,
so
good.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yep. So go ahead, Katie.
Hey, one thing I want to shout out. I did a blog post on this week. American Factory. On Netflix.
Yeah.
2-hour clip. Tim,
it's
up by you.
It's a doc, right?
It is a doc. So Toledo GM plant shuts down. It's kind of that classic, Rust Belt like type vibe. Chinese company comes in to convert it, I think. I'm not sure if they converted it or not, but they made it into an automotive glass factory. And it's basically the clash of cultures. And you think you're going to go into it. Rooting waving USA, the flag, USA, like forever. Turns out this whole global economy thing's a little more complicated than that. It's really fascinating to watch the Americans take a trip to China to see how the sister factories work, to see the Chinese people who are in Toledo trying to lead this turnaround. I can't give it good enough ratings, especially for HR people.
Oh, my husband keeps saying, "Don't you want to watch it?" He watched it without me. He keeps saying, as an HR person, you should watch it. I'm like, I'm into Love is Blind and Too Hot to Handle. I mean,
what? Jlee, what did Bobby? I'm interested to hear what Bobby thought about it.
Well, my husband sometimes likes to lean towards unions and the power of unions and the value of unions. So that's all I'll say. I don't want to watch it and have that conversation with him. Not in the mood.
So it's really interesting. They launched formally the plan. I'll tell this in 30 seconds and we'll move on, Tim. But speaking of looking for the union label, they launched the plant and they've got the founder CEO of this huge company in China that's at the launch, and they throw up I want to say it's a senator, it may have been a representative from Ohio, is there to speak. And he basically, at the launching of the factory, makes positive comments to, and I'm sure our friends from China will recognize the right, yada, yada, yada. And it flashes to the American who had been hired as kind of the SVP of the plant or the VP of the plant, basically saying, "You mother blanker," it's live on screen. And it's really interesting. They let the cameras roll for everything. It was amazing.
Wow.
Okay, if you watch Parasite, I'll watch that. I'll treat you. Okay,
we're coming back. Right. We're coming back next week with Jlee and Katie's Parasite and American Factory updates. And then again, catch Little Fires Everywhere. It's a good one. So we're going to talk about two things today, kind of related, unemployment. And obviously we have all kinds of things with unemployment right now, but the unemployment insurance and how my belief is that it's kind of broken. And then there's a thing out there that started over a decade ago. In fact, it was about 25 years ago, called personal unemployment insurance savings accounts. Now in the US, they're not used, but they are used in some companies like Chile and Austria, obviously smaller examples, but they have been used successfully for a number of years, for over a decade. And then also with the PPP, which is the Payroll Protection Program, which is that small business set aside loans that the government did, which is up to, almost probably $700 million or $700 billion or more now, of which I'm a recipient. So I can talk about personal experience from that. So I have this belief that we're paying Americans basically not to work, right? So, and not everybody, and it's different, but like there's this whole idea. So let me talk a little bit and explain to you guys kind of what this personal uninsured savings accounts are. And so it's not a widely known kind of thing, but the reality is what we pay right now. Jessica, would you say 6% of our pay goes to unemployment insurance? Is that a federal thing, right?
Yeah.
Around there,
Yep.
Whatever it might be, 6-7%. So what these are is basically taking 4% of your income, so it's a forced savings that happens from the government. So they're going to take it from you like a tax, but instead of putting it into this giant pool that anybody can pull from, it gets put into an account designated just for you. So every check, 4% of your income's going into this. And then if you become unemployed, the amount of money you have in your savings account is what you're going to pull from. If you never get unemployed, or let's say you go 10, 20, 30 years without getting unemployed, this account's going to continue to grow and grow and grow. Now, at that point, like if you retire, the countries that have used it have given an option for people at a retirement age, a certain age, they can pull money from that as a retirement kind of account. And
just for level setting, Tim, like this assumes that state unemployment insurance programs may exist still. This would be a federal program that would be on top of what might exist at the state level, right?
Yeah. Well, there has to be this belief, right, that unemployment insurance, the way it's currently done, is just broken. And when you see a pandemic or you see a crisis like this, or like 2008, 2009, Great Recession, that's when we see typical unemployment insurance at that point just doesn't work, right? Because we have way too many people in the system, not enough money, the entire thing collapses. Or like we have right now is every state has unemployment insurance. So Michigan, you get a max of like $432. And Jlee, you had a couple of numbers. What was Washington or Massachusetts?
Yeah, Washington, it's $790 a week, and then I think Mass is $823 a week. A whopping $823.
A whopping $823, but we get the federal $600 on top of that, and what you end up with is people. I mean, that equates to like a $62,000 to $65,000 a year job on the high end. On the low end, it's $42,000 to $45,000 a year. Well, if you're making under $21 an hour, you're ahead to stay on an unemployment versus coming back to work. Now, on these personal savings, unemployment savings accounts, you're incentivized really to actually get back to work or take less money. I mean, you get to choose how much money you take out. I mean, there's limits set, right? So you can't take it all. Or if you were only making certain amounts, you probably get limited out. But the reality is you can choose, if you take money out, you can choose how much money you take out for how long you want, but you're taking money from yourself, so that if you got unemployed again and had the chance to be unemployed, you're just screwing yourself in the long run. So I want to get your guys' feeling on going that route. And like you said, Jlee, it's my belief would be you get away from unemployment insurance the way it's currently set up altogether, and you go nationwide for 350 million people in the U.S. and go, okay, and now you're all going to have these personal savings accounts. One, do you like the idea of it? And two, could that even happen? So, and I know Katie has some ideas of this as well. So Jlee, what's your initial reaction?
So the first thing is that like it has to be a nationwide program if something like this were to exist. Like one of the things I was starting to research was like personal unemployment insurance as like an optional thing that you do like as an individual. And there's some companies out there that do that. Mm-hmm. And like personally, I can't take one more insurance program. I have short-term disability, a long-term disability, home insurance. Like you cannot have yet one more insurance program that is like this opt-in. Like it's got to be everyone in. But there's no doubt that unemployment in this current state in every state, but in this current state of affairs that we're in, it's so broken. It doesn't work. Like there are so many flaws. There's challenges with every state managing this differently. And you see like right now, exactly with the lack of a federal program, that, the interplay between the CARES Act and how states administer unemployment, it's such a mess. And so if you as an employer or an HR person have people in multiple states, multiple jurisdictions, like it's such a headache to have to figure all this stuff out. Like you would hope that this is a once in a lifetime thing that we're going through, and we're not going to have to, have another thing where a CARES Act like program is out there and that we're going to have to figure out how to navigate. But it's broken. I can't deny that. It's got to be mandatory for everyone if we're to do it. But, there's this part of me that also feels like, are we just forcing people to save money? Like, is that what this is? Like yet another program just to force people to save money? And then on a personal level, the only other thing that I would say is like, if we did it, like, is it another tax haven for me? Can I funnel money into it? Maybe there's something there to that, but that's a real elitist 1%er.
It's definitely a forced savings plan to a certain extent for sure. Katie, what's your thoughts?
Well, I hate to be the dissenter here. So I like it at a broad level on the brochure.
Yep.
But I think so I hear the words like federal program, and then I hear the description of kind of like what you're referring to and what you envision, Tim. And that sounds to me like, a plan that has to be fully funded. In order for people to get to the back end. I could make some allusions to Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
In terms of the lack of funding on that. I could make allusions to the fact that there's an investment component to this, for whether it was administered either at the federal or the state level. There's just like all these state retirement plans for like state workers, there's an investment component to this. And I'd love telling the story, in the state I live in, there was a prepaid college tuition program that we bought for both our sons. And during the last recession, by the way, I read yesterday, we're 100% in a recession now. It's official that we are in a recession, in case you were wondering. It's official.
Feels like it,
in the Great Recession of 08-09, the state I live in rode the market down from Dow 14 to Dow 7,000. They rode it all the way down, and then they went to a full cash position to get risk adverse when it went all the way down to 7K. That's not unique to my state. I just think, Tim, you're asking people to ensure that this is fully funded.
Yep.
There's an investment component to it. It just gets really dicey, like really quick.
Yeah, I will say that I think like definitely any program like this, there's some idealism to it where you go, oh, if we were to start from scratch, this would be the great way to do it, right? Because everybody, I'm coming in as a fresh, young 21-year-old, fresh out of college, and I can start my account. And when you're young, you don't need the money like as you get your house, and kids and all that stuff. And so there is some idealism there. So you would have to pre-fund some of this at a certain amount. And then I'm sure there's some timing you could get to. I think like UKD, though, on the investment side, I see that as an incentive for government to want to do that, right? They're going to collect this 4% tax, basically, quote unquote, savings, forced savings. You're only going to get paid back the money you put into it. The investment side is going to go to the government as money to run the system and create the technology and pay for the people that run it, blah, blah, blah. Like that's going to be where they make their money is on the investment side. So they're going to be incentivized clearly to have it whole, to make money on it and not to screw around. And you would hope like, most government, kind of investment programs that they're kind of a little more, I would say conservative in how they do that versus what happened with yours, which maybe was trying to be conservative but totally screwed them in the long run, right?
Well, one thing I like, Tim, that I think is a good thing is like literally just this morning, I had a family member, grew up in the Midwest, had a family member call me, middle-class professional, good worker, white collar, and asked me, they're currently like in a quasi furlough situation.
Have you ever wondered what really makes a generation tick? Who gets to pick the name? And why the slang keeps changing? Don't worry, I can help. My name's Dr. Megan Grace. On #Gen Z, I share the voices and experiences of Generation Z, how they're different from other generations, what moves them, and why they do what they do. In each episode, we go beyond the buzzwords and the stereotypes to dive into real conversations and the insights that matter to making intergenerational collaboration a reality. You can catch #Gen Z on the Work to Find podcast network and wherever you listen to podcasts.
So I won't bore you with all the components of it, but basically what had happened was they needed advice on whether A, they could get into the unemployment system based on what's going on with the CARES Act, and B, whether they even qualified for it. So I think there's a lot of mystery, and I think you really see it in an event like this pandemic. There's a lot of mystery for folks who have not navigated the unemployment like kind of situation, like on a state by state level. There's a really low awareness of what their benefit is and how to get it and if they qualify. So I think anytime you kind of tie it to, a personal account, their personal payment, what have you earned? I think some of that mystery goes away. And like what you're describing would have directly applied to this family member that I was just trying to listen to. Basically, by the way, what I had to end up telling this individual is, okay, I hear a lot of the components. In order to make sure that you don't lose your place in line, when this thing comes back, whenever it comes back, you need to have like an honest conversation with your manager before you tell that manager, hey, I 100% want to be on, in quotation marks, official furlough so I can go grab this federal unemployment benefit.
Yeah, Katie, I have a bias, right? And I have many bias. This is just one bias I have, and shocking. To me, it's a worker bias, right? So like, I think there's so many people I know at every age that if you go to work every single day, and then you hear a story of someone who's unemployed or someone who's chronically unemployed, right? And taking and getting, kind of benefits, you're like, man, like I'm sick and tired of paying into a system so this idiot can go home and smoke pot all day. And that's truly a bias, right? You see them as bottom loaders, bottom feeders, freeloaders. Clearly they're not that, right? They're not, but we tend to have that belief as workers paying into a system similar to like, some of the other, obviously those pieces that we're not getting. And there's a part of that, right? Because I feel like these personal savings accounts, if it's your money that you're pulling from, and there's only so much, you have this built-in incentive to get back to work. Now, I think people who would argue current unemployment insurance only goes for so many weeks or doesn't give you enough money and blah, blah, blah. So your incentive is to get back to work. But I think what we're seeing right now is it's not. And so there's a part of that. It's called like moral hazard is like the official term for these people who, that we feel like there's no incentive, right, to get back to work. And that unemployment insurance kind of acts like a subsidy in a way that actually makes unemployment more prevalent. Like there's that belief, right, where if I know I'm going to get paid 26 weeks, 39 weeks, 52 weeks, whatever the number keeps getting like pushed to higher and higher, like it did during the Great Recession. If I know that's the case, I have very little incentive to go back to work. If I know I only have X dollars and it's going to run out, now I have this, kind of this moral, reasoning behind to go, crap, I got to get back to work. Otherwise I have nothing and I'm homeless or I'm living on my own or whatever that might be.
You know who you sound like?
Andrew Yang.
Okay,
Universal basic income.
Okay, Jlee, I'm coming right back to you. I was going to say Ronald Reagan. Okay, go Jlee.
Oh, well, I thought you were going to say he sounds like Bernie Sanders. No, but the whole moral hazard thing, I mean, that's the same argument with universal basic income, right? Like if you're just giving people money, what is the incentive for them to look for a job and all of that? But we might have to do that as another topic someday, is the concept of universal basic income and what are some of the studies out there saying. And I don't know, I feel like this whole situation we're in some ways is painting a really good picture for an argument in support of UBI. But by the way, we called 2008 the Great Recession. Do we have a name for what we like? Is this the greater, the bigger, the biggest? What do we call it?
The Great Outbreak. Yeah, or COVID.
The great outbreak.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hey,
God.
by
We
the
don't have
way,
a name. I
Jay,
just made that up, by the way.
for the uninitiated, correct me if I'm wrong. So Andrew Yang, a big part of his platform was
Universal
universal basic
basic income.
income, right?
Yeah.
The freedom dividend.
Yep.
So I read some good stuff recently, Jlee, that basically we're doing a great experiment right now
Totally.
by making people comfortable and familiar with UBI as we do a couple of things, right? As you know, it's interesting because and I know we want to talk a little bit about the Payroll Protection Program, but certainly with the CARES Act federal unemployment benefit, that's probably the biggest, that plus, to a lesser extent, the stimulus check that people below a certain income level get. That is probably, I think the next 3, 4, 6 months are going to be a great experiment with UBI. The big question, back to my friend on this call, Ronald Reagan, is whether that is sustainable, like financially for the company. I don't know that it is.
Yeah.
Well, one difference, that $1,200 stimulus check.
Yeah.
I think there was a perspective that should last someone 10 to 12 weeks, which I'm not really sure what that's going to get them for 10 to 12 weeks. Whereas with like UBI, it's like $1,000 every month, right? So
Yeah.
the $600 that goes on top of unemployment, that might get us closer towards an experiment of UBI. But I think with the level of unemployment, I don't know if it's
Tim,
right.
How does Ronald Reagan from DeWitt, Michigan feel about universal basic income? And then let's talk a little bit about Payroll Protection Program and kind of the impact of all this to how that's going down.
I'm not a big fan of universal basic income.
Shocker.
Shocker.
What was the giveaway? Was it some of the tags you used earlier?
The moral hazard. So I'll get us out of this topic on a couple of stats because I know, Katie, you love the numbers. So 2 decades worth of data on the personal income or unemployment savings accounts. 95% have positive balance. 5% went negative, right? So what they saw was in their populations, about 5% of people are chronically users of unemployment insurance. And I'm assuming we would see the same behavior in the US. But the crazier part, the vast majority of these 95% had positive balances at the end of their unemployment spell. So they were going back to work before they used up their money, which again shows that, hey, I don't want to use up this money in case something would happen down the road. And then also a large majority had retirement payouts at the end as well for those that reached that age. So I thought that was good. So let's go into PPP, Payroll Protection Program. We've talked about it a couple of times. Basically what this is another CARES Act program where small businesses are getting money to basically continue their headcount and payroll for 8 weeks. So it's somewhat of an unemployment vehicle. It's just different, right? So the hope is that, hey, if you keep these people on your payroll, you keep paying them, you have them do whatever work they can, still remotely, or if you're essential and they can come in. And then the hope is that would bridge to, you can actually come back to work, or you can actually keep them working because at this point you figured it out and you have enough. So what we're hearing though, is that as people got this money, and I'm one of those people that got the money, I haven't heard this from my people, but because of the unemployment and what we just talked about, the vast amount that's there. And again, let's not kid ourselves. It's not a vast amount, but it's more than it has been. A number of business owners are saying, hey, I went to my employees to say, hey, I'm so excited about this. And I want, I can pay you, and this is so great, and you can keep your benefits and your payroll. And they said, hey, no thanks. We want to stay on unemployment. We don't really want to work. And Jlee, I know your sister is a part of the program as well. What's been the feedback you've gotten?
Yeah, she texted me so excited about, I got my PPP. I can't wait to go talk to my employees about it. And before she did, I called her, which is rare because I don't always pick up the phone, but I called her and I was like, look, you should just go in eyes wide open, because Like, I don't think that, like, she's excited. Of course, she's thrilled and is feeling like here's a great safety net, and feeling better, less guilty about how this is having an impact on her employees. But I was like, you're going to have people who've applied for unemployment, are getting their weekly sum plus the 600 on top of it. And that might be more than what you were paying them, or it might be equivalent to it. And you're not subjecting them to go into an office or go into a workplace where they might not feel safe, and all of that. And I hate to say it, but you may also have people, like to your point earlier around, smoking pot in the basement, who just don't want to go back to work. Like, this is a field day. And I hate to say any of that, because I don't want to, think the worst of mankind. But like, she's in District of Columbia, right? So like, I did the math. And so based on like the max unemployment you can get in DC plus the 600, like if you make, that's basically going to give you the equivalent of like 54,000 a year. And so she definitely has people that are under that, that mark, where like, I just think it was shocking for her as a small business owner to have this realization of like, what do you mean? I thought this is going to be a bailout and something that people will be like relieved by. And just, I had to talk her off the ledge, because she was like, people aren't going to feel that way. Of course they're going to be happy.
Katie, any reaction?
Well, I like the program, and you mentioned it earlier, Tim. I mean, the PPP, to a certain extent, for a lot of people, this is not a universal statement, but for a lot of people, it is unemployment on steroids. Mm-hmm. I think it's a really good idea, because in my eyes, what the government is trying to do is to prevent the optics of a depression. Mm-hmm. And instead, let's just have a recession. I think one of the big gaps, first of all, everything Jlee said in terms of all those challenges, especially if you go really, I mean, Jlee, you mentioned like an annualized rate of 54,000. I think in Georgia's not great on unemployment in the Atlanta area. So it basically becomes like around 40,000 annualized once you add in the federal like benefit. Yeah. So a lot of this, to Jlee's point, is just different levels. I think one thing I would add here is the big gap for some businesses is that you can't use the PPP when it makes the most sense. So, for example, and by the way, that's what the federal government is trying to do, because they're just trying to front load this and keep people at your company rather than, like see the optics of long lines or long queues online.
Definitely psychology behind it, right? Saying you're unemployed versus I'm still employed, even though I'm still sitting at home.
So it's awesome. But like, if you think about like the restaurants of the world who have operations shut down, so what they have to do is they have to onboard those people back on, but there's no business. Yeah. Right. So they've already been shut down. And I think that's the difficult part. But I think it's a great program. I think the optics are really interesting. And, as a small to medium-sized business owner, like what comes to mind, Jlee, and I think we shot around the CNBC article that I think had the spa owner that got the really negative reaction from her employees is, I think you just have to take notes about who wants to be like part of the platform and who doesn't. And maybe even accommodate those people by keeping them unemployed and just hiring other people, which is possible under the PPP.
Go ahead, Tim. So I took a different tact a little bit, right, with my staff, because we knew right away we had some people that we knew are going to be making similar to what unemployment would be, or maybe in some cases slightly more. Now, part of that was having the conversation with them about taxes that weren't being taken out of unemployment and insurance, right? Because if you're on unemployment, now you have to go and pay for COBRA, which is extremely more. And so that number then becomes really little comparable to what I'm going to pay them on a payroll standpoint. And so we had to have some of that education. But we got to the point where we said, well, what happens if someone still says, nope, I'm going to stay on unemployment? So the options were, Katie, the one you gave, which is, okay, we will keep you on unemployment. We'll just go hire somebody else if we could. But my thing was, if I offer you the job back and you decline it, I'm going to decline your unemployment. So now you make a decision, right? I mean, because ultimately that's what should happen. If you get offered a job and you're on unemployment and you turn it down, then, the company that's paying your unemployment should say, hell no, we're not going to continue to, because now you're making that moral hazard decision of saying, heck no, I'm going to stay on unemployment.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing I wonder is if you, as an employer, were to say, we're going to let you, quote unquote, let you stay on unemployment. Is that even an option, or is that risky for an employer? Because are you at that point potentially like in the situation of this appearance of passing costs back on to like a state or federal government because you're letting them stay on unemployment as opposed to like rightfully bringing them back to work when you could?
Well, it's
I don't know.
it's kind of a wash, Jaylee, because if you don't spend the money for payroll on the PPP, you're going to have to pay that back to the government anyways. And if you would say, go ahead and stay on unemployment, but I'm going to use it because I'm employing somebody else, for the government, that's a wash, right? So, because you're going to pay somebody and then somebody's going on unemployment. So it's an even wash. But
hey, and by the way, not to bring like politics into it, but one of the reasons that the CARES Act got held up originally, like late, was a lot of like Republican leaders figured out that there was a disincentive to work in the federal unemployment benefit. And I believe the middle ground was, the Bernies of the world wanted to go heavier on the federal unemployment like level. They wanted to go beyond $600. And I think the Republicans got out of the way. I think with a lot of this, the government had to go speed over perfect details. And you're seeing that play out in a lot of these programs in a lot of different ways. And I guess in the big thing, like with everything that's gone on, even though I'm a moderate, like conservative, I would still, I think the government's done about as good as they could do. I wish there was more speed, but imagine if there wasn't just the even moderate level of speed we had, like, what happens.
I actually think from a speed perspective, I mean, not that I'm always applauding federal government or certain administrations, but I actually think like speed of PPP and like how quickly people got their, applications in, approved, et cetera. It's actually impressive.
Yeah. And there was some negative stuff this week, I think, because when you move that fast, you can't put a lot of rules in place, right? So you had some like Shake Shacks of the world and Ruth's Chris go out there and get money, right? But at the same time, I think some of those companies are making the right decision of putting that back. I was shocked, KD. I don't know if you saw the list of all the bigger companies that got those loans that were considered SMB. And there were some people on there that were like SMB that were doing $750 million in revenue, and just these.
It was surprising.
These numbers, I'm like, holy crap! Like there's
back to the speed level, right? The threshold was under 500 employees.
That's it. Yeah.
And they didn't really think about, publicly traded. Yeah. Initially there were blocks related to a lot of technology companies that had PE firms in, where they didn't necessarily have control of their own company. Those types of firms, and that's I'm giving you a big generality there, they got blocked early. They opened that up later, and I think in the second round. But I agree with Jlee. I think the speed really has been pretty good. None of this is going to be perfect. By the way, one other fact, Tim, you mentioned the list of companies that's there. I can't, even though I'd love to, like if you take a Shake Shack, and I'm going to distinguish between a big name like that everybody kind of knows. Yeah. And you think about the size of the corporate office versus the franchise. Like I can't, even though it's easy to do emotionally, like I can't fault or say that a McDonald's franchisee that has 300 employees deserves the money less than somebody else because they're employing it. But I think there's this big emotional connection anytime you see a brand name.
Yeah, by the way, I love Shake Shack. Oh God, one of the best burgers ever. Okay, I'm gonna get us out of here, guys. So any final thoughts on unemployment, PPP, or what you're watching this week? Because I know Parasite and American Factory are going down. Any other recommendations?
Well, not a recommendation, but I do want to give a shout out to, like, on this unemployment topic. Yeah. I think that like HR professionals right now are in this really tough situation of trying to figure out how to navigate through all the dysfunction. And I think for your line level HR people in the trenches, I have seen posts from people on social media and elsewhere around like just the stress of it, trying to figure it out on behalf of their employees. And it's not easy. And so I salute our HR friends in the trenches for trying to figure it out, because it's no fun. It's so dysfunctional. And, they just want to do what they can for their people. And it's not easy. So
totally agree. Katie?
So my recommendation is Dave Chappelle. Just go out.
Old or like a new?
I would go older. I
Older.
was sharing with some friends over the weekend a certain clip from the DC show back in the Comedy Central days. And if you just want to lighten up a little bit and do something that's totally non-serious, it's just good stuff. By the way, the Netflix specials are pretty good as well.
Stuff,
yeah, you just have to be ready for it to be incredibly.
My favorite Chappelle moment ever is Charlie Murphy playing basketball with Prince. And that story is one of the best things. It's one of the funniest things. I can watch that 100 times and laugh every single time. Yeah,
and I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think the one I was sharing was Black George Bush.
Oh yeah.
Where Dave was like running through it as George. I guess George, is it George W? Yeah, George W. Hilarious. Funny stuff, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican.
All right, kids, that is it for the HR Famous podcast for Kris Dunn and Jessica Lee. I'm Tim Sackett, and we are out.